Okay, we're live. Right
All
on.
right, and yes, we are hijacking the stream again.
Yes. We have made our way past the robots. We snuck around the dragon and we have taken control of the WriteNow Studio. It's a little dark in here, isn't it? Let me turn on some ambient light. So I was just telling Soul today I got a letter from somebody that prompted me to invite us all to reflect upon rejection. And yeah, this is so whenever you put yourself out there and make yourself vulnerable and do something creative or strange or intimate or whatever, and hey Tiara, who do we have in here? There's Tiara. Hello Tiara. We've got Bobby. Bobby's asking about, I guess we should talk about this first before I start talking about myself. Anyone heard how Kaufman is? Kaufman sends his regards, and he will be back very soon. Just as soon as we let him out of the basement. Hi, Bobby, by the way. So anyway, so rejection. So you are going to be rejected by people for numerous reasons as a writer. And it just seems like aside from like the personal interactions that you have with like other writers in your writing groups or in college, if you've been to any sort of classes, I have experiences from all walks, all of those places where people have just simply for one reason or another not liked what I've done. And that's because I'm a freaking weirdo. And it has taken me a really long time with being okay with how I do things and not taking things that people you respect even seriously necessarily. There is feedback that is crucial for growing as a writer. Yeah. And there's feedback from people who just don't understand what you're doing. And that can be for a couple of different reasons. One, they could just not like your genre.
Yeah.
Another reason is they have different expectations for what you're doing. For example, as an editor, I would turn this story into what I want to see. I would start to become creative with it, which is why I don't edit, because I want to start to put my own print on what I'm reading. So I try to be very careful of that when I'm talking to anybody about what they're working on. Obviously, if you're spitballing ideas, it's fine to put out your ideas.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, like, I tend to be like, I would do it this way. And it's just like, that's not fair to who you're talking to necessarily. If you don't understand something, like, it's really, I think, the best approach to talking to somebody about their writing, if you don't understand what they're doing, is accept the fact that you just might not understand their perspective, or you might not have had those experiences. You don't want to like say that they're wrong because you've never experienced that, because they're not necessarily wrong for that reason. You just don't quite understand what they're trying to say, or the wording is a little bit, there's a lot of reasons why there's a disconnect between the author and the reader. So that's one thing. That's editing. That's figuring out how to write in a way that connects with your audience. That's being respectful during the editing process. And then there's everybody else. And these people, for whatever reason, have decided that you suck and you're always going to suck, and they will make you feel like crap about yourself.
Yeah.
I don't have thick skin. I do not. The best I can do is try to laugh about it and get over it as quickly as possible. And because of the things that I try to write, because I go into weird territory, and I'm comfortable over there. That's where I like to hang out. I like to do things that are different and experimental and surreal, and I like to look at things from an artistic perspective, and that does not jive with everybody, and that's okay. What the problem is when people try to, for whatever reason, take what you're doing and turn it into something else that they can understand.
Yeah.
Or
there's only so much you can do with somebody else's work that can help you understand it. But I think there's actually very few people that can realistically do that. But for the most part, I think people, they hit their limit pretty soon. If they can't understand it in the first couple chapters, probably not going to be able to understand the rest of the book.
Yeah.
That was the problem I had with Wolf Song. Is just I got lost in it. And I wasn't even like halfway through the book, and then suddenly I just could not get it. I'm honestly planning on going back and actually retrying it, maybe like try rereading parts that I went over, but still, if I hit my limit with that, I'm gonna understand that, but I'm not gonna complain about it. But a lot of people probably will.
Oh yeah, yeah, and the people that do, it's just like, yeah, but if you're not getting something, like your neural highways are, meander in particular patterns, which are either going to sync or not sync with what you're reading. Like one person can have one opinion. I mean, like it's like the work of David Lynch. I really admire him as a film director, and he does really weird stuff that not everybody gets. But for some reason, it seemed to resonate with a bigger audience, But he was very artistic and very dreamlike and surreal in the images that he used. He's very. I think that the connection a lot of people had with his work was he took on such serious topics, like the murder of a teenage girl and why that came about, and and he created a mystery with Twin Peaks, and he created like body horror with Eraserhead. But like I still haven't seen Mulholland Drive. I know I need to. Everybody who's a David Lynch fan in the audience will boo me now. That's fine. Go ahead. I'm okay with that. I just have a huge list I haven't gotten through yet of movies. But not everybody got what he wrote. And he was always okay with that. Like he got annoyed when people started asking him what his movies meant. And he always had the most beautiful response. It was like, everybody wants to have a conversation about the movie. The movie is the conversation for me. Like, that's what I said about it. Like either you get it or you don't. And I think that we can all take a lesson from that. And at the end of the day, it's got to be you sit down and figure out because I have no thick skin for even like helpful criticism either. Like I get my feelings hurt about that too, like a little bit. I'm just like, you don't like the way that I used the word butt 18 times in the first chapter? Well, you're a butt. Like I get a little bit like I haven't done anything wrong. I have a little bit of that fear of like being I was a very goody two shoes kid. I didn't like being in trouble. So it still feels like getting in trouble a little bit to have somebody edit my work. But I also understand that I want to improve as a writer, and editors are doing what they do because they want to help you improve as a writer. So, sometimes it's okay to be a little bit like me, but like get over it really fast. And so you've got to learn to discern. And if you have that, like I do, you have to learn to discern you're right. That's really good advice. Or, for me, it was accepting that like I write really weird stuff up here, but I do need to ground it somewhat so the readers that will like it can follow it. Right. So I think that helps from getting an edit after you haven't looked at it for a while, because then sometimes you come back to something and you're like, what did I even mean here?
Yes.
And it's like then the editor can help you be like, I can translate that for you if you can help me figure out what you're trying, a little bit more what you're trying to say. Yeah. So there's that. There, if you do that, you can always go back and be like, oh yeah, I can see why that doesn't make sense now. But but there are going to be people who are going to want to be jealous, and they're going to want to try to turn it into something it's not. They're going to tell you it's something it's not too. Like a lot of straw man arguments where people are like, this is, or just rude people. And there's really rude people out there too. And for all these different reasons, like your self-confidence can take a hit. And it can be detrimental to your confidence in yourself as a writer. And I think that's what Kaufman's always about, is being confident as a writer.
It's being confident and motivated.
And motivated, yeah.
Confidence and motivation are like the two main things I think right now, and especially Kaufman, really kind of revolve around. And they can sometimes intersect, but if you don't have the confidence, you're probably not going to have the motivation, or at least you're less likely to.
Yeah, and that's because it doesn't feel good to write something that you're afraid is going to come off. Like if you become afraid of what other people are going to interpret about it, or like there's no reason to be writing, then you're not going to be motivated to do it. But at the end of the day, you're the one who has to be happy with what you've written.
If you don't enjoy what you're writing, then don't write whatever you're doing. Find something else.
there's other topics that you probably will enjoy out there. That might be why like most writers bounce around a lot, because they're like, I would get bored of one. Yeah, you get bored at one and then you try something. You got it's the ideas phase, right? The beginning and the ideas are easier than the writing. So
yeah, I know myself.
I was like, somebody's yawning. Oh, it's
yes, I keep yawning. I apologize for that.
I think this is opportunity to start talking again. Sorry.
It's all right. But I know, like myself, I actually didn't bounce around too much when I first started. I already had an idea what I liked. I liked fictional stories. I really like stuff with pirates because I was unhealthily obsessed with One Piece as a kid. And then Bloody Jack came along and it just made it worse.
Oh.
But I knew what I liked. I loved adventure stories. I loved that kind of underdog kind of story. I love the whole people having all these issues and then rising above them. I love those stories from the beginning. I knew what I liked and I stuck with that. And every once in a while I branched out, but I started with what I liked and then I kind of went from there. And that's how I kind of found the genre I'm in now, is because I didn't bounce around too much in the beginning. I had the one thing I liked. That was my root. And occasionally had a branch that went off into something else. And then if I didn't like that branch, I cut it off. But I still had my root from the beginning. So with me, it was just kind of like I knew what I liked and then what is related to what I like. And then I go from there. And that really helped.
I think,
but I will say my own confidence with writing actually has not ever taken a toll, has not ever taken a blow. It's my confidence with other things.
Yeah, it's funny, like the things that we decide to be self-conscious about. I think that if you have, I think that there's, I'm trying to figure out what, because I had the experience where I was in my master's degree program and the individual who ran that program was actively trying to get me to quit. And would say very derogatory things to me during class. And she called me the suicide poet to people. So yeah, she was terrible, by the way.
God, and I would have is just dark.
It is. And she was like, she was okay with it. Like she would say things and the entire class would turn around and be like, look at me like, are you okay? And it's like, I don't know where I found the strength to keep going sometimes, but like I found out from somebody who I've graduated with somebody whose wife worked in the library. When I had a degree in my master's degree in history first, and then I went back for creative writing. And then I graduated with him back in the history department. His wife worked at the library, and she said that's her tactic. That's just how, if she decides she doesn't like somebody, that's what she does. So I went through that with writing poetry, which is like so intimate, such an intimate experience. And I think that you start to learn to navigate, if you allow yourself not to be like overpowered or crumble, and it took me a long time to get, I think that my biggest strength is being in academia because I was always a good student. And if I didn't have that background, I think she probably would have like made me want to like jump off a bridge. I'll show you, I'll do that thing. Or I would have like at least like in front of her house or something. I don't know, been dramatic about it. I'm just kidding. That's not something you joke about, is it? I'm sorry. But anyway.
Well, okay, so it's not something you joke about, but at the same time, there are some people out there who do use that as a coping mechanism. So
I do. I'm like, oh yeah, well, take that, haha, like dark irony, my thing. Okay. So anyway, but like, I started to kind of observe her behavior, and I realized that she wasn't talking to me. She wasn't talking to the person I was. She wasn't talking to who I knew I was. And one of the things that you start to recognize is that people aren't talking to who they think they're talking to. They're talking to somebody in their past. They're having a conversation with somebody that they, for whatever reason, got stuck in their craw that they didn't like. And for some reason, I shared characteristics with that person. because half of the things that she would accuse me of, I hadn't done. So I knew that I wasn't dealing with somebody who was. A lot of people are walking around out there telling themselves in their own fictional versions of how reality works. So I think when I say, like, don't let your confidence necessarily be affected by those people, they're not even really talking to who you are. Or they're not even
they're basically projecting.
Yeah. I mean, they're not contending with reality. They're contending with their own darkness and their own demons. So they absolutely, like, are venting. They're projecting. They're doing all sorts of different things to escape from dealing with their own problems, because problems are painful and they don't want to deal with them. So they look at somebody else that they can make look smaller so that they can be bigger. And that's a lot of, I think, what criticism that hurts, criticism that has teeth in it. I think that's what a lot of it is. I was told today. So that was 10 years ago. And as of today, when somebody told me that they didn't understand why I was printing my books through a professional printer when inkjet and a stapler would do just the same thing, I wasn't as affected by it. It's kind of funny, actually, but they don't know who I am. They don't know what I'm trying to do, and they are not my audience.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I still thought it was kind of funny.
Yeah, no, that actually was pretty funny.
I can't be like, as a writer, like, I can't be 100% mad about that, because that's actually clever. Damn it. But otherwise, so I mean, like, I hate to wander into dark territory, but we all get criticism, undeserved criticism from somewhere.
Yes.
Critique and criticism aren't the same. That's right.
That is very true. And most of the time, I think people can actually tell the difference between them. And some of it is simply how it's delivered.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the wording, it's how it's delivered. And if it's in person or, audible, it's the tone that goes with it. And I think it's just also the circumstance.
Mm-hmm. I think that, yeah. And I mean, even in a place where, like, critique is supposed to be sacred, in the workshop of the grad students, you're going to find egos.
Yes.
There. You are always there is no safe place for writers. So stop retreating into yourself, be brave, and let your brush strokes fly in whatever way you want them to. Because that's the only way you're going to get it out there. You can't depend on anybody else to tell you it's good or bad. What you can depend on is yourself to say it the way you want to say it. So
exactly.
Yeah. That's my 2 cents.
I actually think it was saying, what was it? It was about stories. Oh, no two stories are alike. Mm-hmm. Because even if two authors write the same exact story, it will not be the exact same because of how they view it. Exactly. Because of how they tell it.
Exactly. Hey, think of a police officer interviewing people after an accident. And here's the accident, a car accident, and one person was standing here, and one person was getting something from the shop over here, and another person was the two people behind the wheels. Everybody is going to have a different story to tell about how that incident works. So what, as readers, you have to kind of realize is the cool part about reading things is to experience reality, existence, being a human being from somebody else's perspective. I think that I think that our society can be incredibly judgmental. And I think that the solution to judginess, being judginess is to be curious. To be interested and intrigued about the things that are going on in your world, rather than to have
curiosity is dying off, which is a shame.
No, we writers will save it by being curious.
Oh yeah, no, we really need to, but it's just a shame that it just really does seem to be disappearing.
Everybody's decided that their perspective, their objective, which one is it? Subjective perception is truth. And, like, having been a member of the human race for like 40-ish years, I can tell you that is not most people's perspective is not the reality they think it is. I mean, like, one of the cool things that history taught you was you're biased. You're all biased. You grew up in a particular time at a particular place where you were speaking a certain language, and all of those things in this particular culture, church, whatever, all of those things have inherent biases that you get from simply by virtue of growing up within them. So, like, truth is very subjective when you're talking about most things. I don't know, like math and science tends to be like universal truthiness.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, once you start talking about, people started taking their opinions about things and their perspective about things and turning them into
they twisted them.
Well, they think that this is how it should be for everybody. And it's like, when did you become so narrow-minded in your perception of reality? Read more books.
Yeah, that really is the answer. I think I actually saw something, God, this was ages ago now, but it actually showed that people who read more, and not just like 1 or 2 books over their entire lifetime, but people who read regularly and are willing to at least try a different book occasionally, they're actually shown to be, a lot more open-minded, a lot more empathetic, have more empathy. God, there's like 3 other things. God, I can't think about something.
Like
but the main one was empathy, though, because that's like the one thing humans need is empathy.
I agree. Like, I agree that
another one was compassion.
Oh, you see, because like we're not. I mean, the more that from my particular weird spiritual, but also from a biological perspective, nobody exists in a vacuum. And I think that you take a frog out of an environment, like a species of frog. No, the beavers. Let's do the beavers in Yellowstone when the wolves. It was the wolves. All right, sorry, backing up. So in particular biospheres are very interdependent on each other. So when the wolves were extinct in Yellowstone, all the beavers ran off. And I think that the deer population dwindled at the same time.
It exploded, yes. It wasn't until a pack of wolves was reintroduced into Yellowstone that the deer population was kept under control.
That was it.
The beavers made their way back. The rivers changed. The entire ecosystem actually started recovering. It was a really neat thing. I read about that a few times.
It was okay. So the deer population exploded. The deer were eating because they didn't have as much food as they would have because their population was bigger. So they started eating the tree bark. The tree bark eating killed the trees. Beavers need trees to build their I think they're called dens. I'm not quite sure, but they're dams. They're dams. And then because they didn't have enough trees to build the things, they left, and it affected the entire ecosystem. So, I mean, like, it may sound like spiritual woo-woo, like we are all one, to say that we need and depend on each other. But in terms of like very base scientific fact, every component of an ecosystem exists to support another component. So, like,
when one thing falls, everything else starts
everything
falling.
Else does. Who would have thought that the wolf was related to the beaver population, but through the plot.
Well, I think a lot of people actually would guess that the wolves disappearing is what caused the deer population to explode. But I don't think people would have actually guessed how deeply that was ingrained with the entire ecosystem. Most people probably just thought, okay, so the deer, there's just more deer. They didn't go beyond that. They didn't realize that the deer were affecting the beaver, that the beavers were affecting everything else because they were affecting the rivers itself. So,
or even like if you have too much of a particular, I can't remember what it is, but like algal blooms, you get too much, I don't remember what they eat, but the population explodes and it ends up creating dead spots in the ocean because they've gone through and ravenously like consumed everything. I mean, like, there's a lot of examples in nature of like the interdependence of things. And I think that one of the things that you have to consider as a human being is that, like, I mean, there's kind of a myopic mindset among people who like our culture is the best culture and no other culture should rival our culture. And it's like, I don't think it's a competition. I think that we're all in it together. Oh my God. Would you like to come say hello?
Hey,
Look who it is. How are you
thanks for taking over the hijacking the stream a second day.
No problem.
How's it been going for you guys?
Been having a very deep philosophical talk today.
It's my fault. I plan on doing like improvisational dance for the second half, though, just to cheer everybody up.
That sounds like it sounds pretty entertaining. So we got philosophy and dancing.
Philosophical dancing. That's a genre that hasn't been mashed up yet. I'll get on that.
It probably has. We just probably aren't aware of it.
I know of a street performer philosopher that's close. Performance.
Also, in case you can't see that cough.
Oh,
yeah.
Say hello and hope he's recovering. I appreciate that, guys. Yeah, I can't see the chat. Because I'm on the phone.
Oh, okay. You got that.
I need to download the app. I'm so used to always being in the doing this from my PC. Oh, just kidding. I figured it out.
Oh, good.
I'm doing all right. It's been a rough couple of days, but just slowly recovering and hopefully better and back at it tomorrow.
Good. Because they don't want to listen to me too much longer, I can guarantee it.
I'm sure they are having an excellent time with you guys.
It's okay.
They're like, wow, finally get a break from Kaufman.
No, please come back. Sol and I decided that we talked about pretty much everything yesterday. We covered it, so your show is good for the next week or so. That 2.5 hours, we managed to. I think we managed to touch on most main topics.
I think so.
Yeah.
You guys had a pretty sizable live stream yesterday. Did you guys write it all, or did you guys just chat the whole time?
It was just chatting
the whole time. Mm-hmm.
Well, clearly, the community probably really enjoyed that.
They're taking notes. This is what you do when you hijack a studio?
I'm going to come back, and everyone will be wanting to write about philosophy.
Oh gosh,
that would be interesting.
My master plan. That would be very philosophical of everybody. Yeah, I got a bit of a rejection letter today, so I might have tried to take myself through the healing process a little.
Hey, no, it's fine. It was actually really interesting because the first thing we talked about, Koff, was basically dealing with rejection and criticism and all that.
That is a tough one.
It is. It is a tough one.
Rejection.
But we know that
the only way to minimize rejection and how you feel about it is based on what your expectations are. If your expectations or you place your emotional well-being into the outcome of a result, then of course you're going to be disappointed. But if you do 100 rejection letters, or you're looking at it as all right, well, that's just one more no to the 1,000 of yeses that are going to come next.
I think that it also comes from, you're right, but always have the expectation that you know what you're doing in some way. Don't doubt yourself too much too. I think that for me, the problem that I've had in the past is I get whipped around by it and pierced by it, and then you suddenly become doubtful of what you want to do. And I think that you're right. If I expected that I'm still doing the right thing and I can just move through this, it's better. I'm still a little mad, but she was funny about it, so it was all right.
How many rejection letters have you gotten before?
Me? None. This was
this is your first.
I haven't sent anything out.
I was like, well, if you're getting 100 rejection letters, that'd be different. But
yeah, no, I asked an old college professor of mine to help me with my little funding the Love Spell Murders, and she said something to the effect of, why are you printing these? She read Daturas, and she was like, why are you printing these out when an inkjet printer and a stapler would be the same thing? I know. was like, at least it's funny, right?
Yeah. I've never sent anything out either, so I've never gotten a rejection letter.
I don't like. I like writers groups. I think that have nice people in them. Like that can tell you like what Mary brought up the difference between criticism and critique too, and yeah, like how to take one with a grain of salt. So anyway, how many have you gotten, Kaufman?
Rejection letters?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I haven't sent out letters before.
No.
I haven't sent out any query letters. But out of how many writers have I most likely spoken to this past year? Maybe 5,000-6,000. Out of the 5,000-6,000, how many messages did I send out? Probably 1 to 2, not 5, 6. Probably like 10 to 20,000.
So expect rejection, basically, because it's
pretty much
to you, and people will respond to you if they're in a place and they want to.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're just not meeting some people on their level.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Do you need to go? Okay, back into the closet with you.
Get better, Cough.
Yeah, feel better. We're all waiting to hear back from you when you're feeling a little bit more like chatting. Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Okay. Bye.
Well, nice to see that he's doing relatively well.
Yeah, he's a proof of life. Yep. Came in, bestowed some wisdom upon us. I feel better about my rejection letter.
This is very true. Sometimes I've actually heard this. Sometimes rejection letters are, you might have written well, but sometimes I think it's actually because they can't take any more for that year. Like there's some indie publishers out there. They can only take like so many a year. So
it's so many different reasons why people will reject you or will be critical of your work, and so many of them don't have anything to do with the merits that you bring to your work. So I mean, just the big takeaway from this is like, manage your expectations. Not everybody is going to be on the same page as you are. For example, I should have thought of that before I opened that email.
And don't set your hopes too high or you will crush yourself.
Yes, don't get too excited about something until it's signed on the dotted line. But also, like, don't lose faith in yourself either. Like, you don't need to
I think that's actually the biggest thing is, if you doubt yourself, eventually it's going to catch up to you and you're going to screw yourself.
Yeah, you are. You're going to end up not doing something that you're really good at because somebody else told you they didn't like it. And yeah. Anyway, so I promised interpretive dance. I am not delivering on that promise. I hope that your expectations weren't too high for that. Let's hop over to, let's do limericks. I'm gonna look for a limerick right quick. Man, I'm gonna lighten the mood up. A limerick is a 5-line poem with a strict rhyme scheme and a bouncy rhythm that's often comical, nonsensical, or lewd. They originate in Ireland, and I can't find any right off the top. There was an, oh wait, I better read it first. Okay, there was an old man with a beard who said, "It is just as I feared. 2 owls and a hen, 4 larks and a wren have all built nests in my beard." Ta-da! A poem. That guy was not rejected by those birds. He was accepted. And it feels nice to be accepted. And I feel accepted here by the WriteNow community. Thank you so much for giving me a home. Does anybody else feel like a stray cat when you're a writer? As a writer, sometimes you just bouncing through the alleys of like what you've experienced and what you know.
Honestly, for myself, no.
You have purpose.
I wouldn't say that. Now, when it comes to like bouncing around my ideas, instead of like a stray cat going from one thing to another and just kind of, like not being able to focus on something, for me, it's more like I have it in a jar and I decide which jar I'm going to open at that time.
Oh, that's a good.
And sometimes 20 of them are open at once.
then the potions all open at once, and oh my goodness! So
hey, sometimes that actually has an interesting effect though, because that's what happened with pirates. Is it was before I understood how to write well. Pirates was actually loosely based off One Piece. The genetic abilities were actually meant to be given to the characters by potions. In fact, actually, that's kind of what happened with Kasai. Is his original iteration ended up taking the potion without realizing what it was, and they got really hurt, and the potion's abilities activated when he got really hurt. Hilariously, I actually kept that. His abilities did not activate until near the end of the end of the first part, in a really bad moment where he almost died.
Oh, of course.
So I still kept that. I just changed how it happened. But I can't remember exactly how I got off the potion thing. Oh, right. So long story short, I'm an adopted kid. I know my birth family. I've actually met them, and just because I'm online, I'm streaming, I'm not saying a word about that. But I do know them, and I was obsessed with genetics when I was a kid. Because I think a lot of it actually came from being adopted. I want to know my genetic heritage. So I was obsessed with genetics. By the time I hit 15, I really got into that. And I think sometimes I seriously think if I had better grades and had less creativity, I might have actually gone into genetics and neuroscience.
Oh, that's cool.
And weirdly enough, I still research that kind of thing nowadays. It's just now I just strictly use it for my books. I don't actually go to a degree for it.
There is no other craft that will allow you to take whatever niche interest or, whatever category of things that you like and allow you to talk about it in an interesting way.
But I started reading about genetics. I started reading about how the DNA affects who we are and how deep it goes. And eventually that turned into, wait a minute, there's pirates. What if they don't work on potions? What if they don't work on a curse? What if that's how they're born?
Oh, interesting.
And it went from magic to actual science, which is why the series is science fiction and not fantasy. Because everything is based off genetics and mutations and evolution and how the earth changes over time.
That's interesting. I like that.
It was originally supposed to be like this big, not exactly magical, but like fantasy thing. And then it turned into this whole science fiction, and holy crap, I could actually really research my niche interest. And it turned into this thing that actually turned out really good.
I know what this is. I can write about it. I love that. I think that magic systems are interesting. Like, I know that a lot of people that I talked to over the years when I talked about fantasy writing have had, like, especially with like the advent of Harry Potter and the popularity of magical fantasy and magical realism, a lot of discussions circle around like what kind of magic system you have and really kind of understanding that, which I think is like of the utmost importance if you're a writer. You need to have some sort of idea of like the mechanisms behind what you're doing.
You need to have the basics. And I've noticed there are two kinds of writers in the world. There are the writers that they have a general idea of what they're doing, but they do not have it written down. And then there are the writers who plot literally every little thing out. I fall into the second category.
Yeah, I would have guessed. Never would have guessed. I like mine's kind of lazy. Like I know enough about physics and theories of physics and quantum. Like my stuff tends to get a bit mystical, so I deal with a lot of quantum physics and spooky motion at a distance and entanglements and things like that. Yeah. So like my philosophy is take it as far as you can with physics, and then once that ledge has been reached, figure out how to apply physics to the magic.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
I have like at one point I have these two magicians lighting all these beacons across the earth to create a resonant sound that will allow entities to slip from the aether into the material world. And I was talking to a physics professor about that, and I said how, and he's like, well, theoretically it could work. You just need something to power the processor. So that's when I came up with the idea of having a rogue sun wander into the solar system So that could be harnessed to power the processor that would allow the resonant. So, I mean, like that's, I take it as far as I can, and then I cross apply the physics to the magic. But there's like,
Really
I also,
neat.
thank you. Yeah. There's also like really cool stuff that you can do in different ways. Like the Magicians, I never read the books. I need to, but the TV show was so cool because they had they were spellcasting with all their hand motions. And I don't know, hands are cool, right? And especially if you can get like almost that dancing that they were doing with them. And then they'd cast
So basically
spells
like what Naruto did with the hand signs.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, they should.
Sorry, anime nerd, so.
No, perfect. Like, yeah, it was, and it's just like, it's more of a symbolic, arcane knowledge. We've just like what I would call sympathetic magic. We've done it this way so many times that eventually it gets coded in whatever system and we can use it. It's still got a foundation, a magical foundation, and it still has a set of rules. I think if you have a set of rules, you can get away with anything.
Yeah, but those rules have to have like a minimum to them to be able to understand what you're doing and everything.
Mm-hmm. You have to, I don't think that like just wandering by and like having weird unless you're doing a book about weird random events like surrealism that have no real like, they kind of
that's kind of an exception there though.
Yeah.
Beyond that though, you gotta hit a certain line and you can go over it, but you gotta hit that certain line first.
You've either got to be an artist about it and you've got to be taking yourself seriously, and you have to, there's still an establishment of some sort of, even if the rules are jumbled or strange, you can still get away with it. Or you're just being lazy and you're like, Deus ex machina everything, right? Oh, I need some bread. Bread, yay, like surprise, everything works out. Like it's your protagonist has to have flaws. Things have to, there has to be conflict, there has to be tension, there has to be all of these different things. You can't just like,
there has to be connections.
Yeah, and connections and things that are, things that go against people, because otherwise, like, you're reading like, I mean, I don't know.
If it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't connect to what everything else in the book, or at least something else, it's going to be a lot harder for the readers to understand. And it's probably going to drive editors up the wall.
Yeah. Unless you've got like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a book that has no conflict in it that works.
If you can find that, I will be amazed.
I'm trying to think like.
Yeah, I will say this: imperfections make believable characters. That is so true.
But
and I know this by experience because of what I put Kasai through. There are limits to what you can do.
Yeah, you also don't want to, unless your character is Superman, like literally, you don't want to pile on too many. And even like what was cool about Superman was that like he was invincible, right? So he always had to pull back in everything that he did. He couldn't unleash the full Kal-El, because he was working with very, delicate human beings, and he was trying to protect everybody. But I can't remember who he fought and what comic it was, but it was somebody who was his equal, and he was happy. And because he's like, now I don't have to hold back. Like, I think he ended up.
Plus, also, we can't forget he did have one weakness.
Oh yeah. See, you still have to have a weakness, like. Even if, like,
of course, also having to hold back though, it could be considered a really good weakness though, because for one, that shows awareness of his own character.
Yeah.
Which having a character be aware of themselves is always a good thing.
Yeah.
But also, forcing yourself to hold yourself back. How many people realistically do that? A lot more than we think. So it's a very good weakness that I think a lot more people can sympathize or even empathize with without even realizing it, or at least willing to admit it.
We have in the different roles that we have to be is like people navigating other people on this planet. We've got a filter. We don't get to say everything that we want to say. You're right. Like some of us, I think that now I'm going to channel Superman the next time I get an unkind word my way and just hold back my writer's tongue and not say anything. I actually didn't say anything. because I don't know. Sometimes it's good to just step away from the situation and
that's usually the best
laugh
thing you
about
can do,
it.
step away.
Yeah, step away is really good advice, because then when you come back, you realize that you're not. I thought I was bad at writing for about 5 seconds, and I realized I'm not. Not according to me, anyway. I'm sure some people.
And honestly, that's what matters. There is, do you doubt yourself?
Yeah,
no, if you don't, then you're good.
No, I know what I'm doing is what I'm doing. Do I have trouble with it? Do I have trouble with being translated into something that readers can follow? Sometimes I do. That's why I have an editor. But like, it's not like I enjoy what I'm writing. I love what I'm writing. I love what I do. Somebody out there, it's going to resonate with somebody someday. So I'm just getting started. But for a second there, I was just like, 5 seconds of woe is me. And I got over it. Still, I don't know. You know that thing where you're like, I'm not still mad. But I am.
Yeah.
I don't know how long this is going to last, but I hope it's over soon. Who has a magic potion for that? Oh, you know what that reminds me of? One of my favorite movies is The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Has anybody seen that? Oh, it had Kate Winslet. Well, not Kate Winslet. Was it Kate Winslet? Hang on. It was about... Yeah, it was about this guy and this girl, Kate Winslet and Jim Carrey, and they break up, and he decides he wants to get back together with her, so he goes and visits her at the bookstore she's working at, and she doesn't recognize him. So he figures out that, he figures out that she has gone to this clinic called the Lacuna Clinic and had him scrub from her memories. And
that makes me think of a Futurama episode.
Yeah, it's a little quirkier than, I mean, it's art quirky, I guess. Like, so he decides to have the same procedure done too. So he gets it started. Like, they go into his room. And they stay there all night, and they wait for the scrubbing to take place. And so the movie's about Jim Carrey going backwards in time through his memories of Kate Winslet, and he realizes that he doesn't want to lose the memories of her. So he keeps burying himself in memories that aren't related to memories of her, to try to hide from the process that is removing her from him, because he wants to be with her. And the clever thing that happens in this movie, I don't know, I don't want to spoil it for people, but it's incredibly clever and it's very heartwarming. And it's about like when we want to get over something or forget something that we really treasured, like, do we really want to get rid of the memory? Yeah, it is such a sad movie, but I like the ending a lot. But it's just very it was well done, and it had great cinematography too, because as they went deeper and deeper into his memories, like the lighting got darker and darker. It was a great movie. But I think that when you're able to tell a story like that, that was there was a lot of really good movies. I don't know, there's probably some books that came out at the same time, but they were all kind of meta or strangely surreal. Stranger Than Fiction was another one, which was great. It had, again, a comedy actor doing a serious role. Will Ferrell plays this guy, and he's brushing his teeth one morning, and this woman starts narrating about how he's going to die, and he's like, what? And at the same time that he's living his life, this writer is writing his story, and the two are connected. Yeah. So like, and he's something boring, like a tax auditor or something like that. And like, yeah. So in this story, like, she's writing, it's very meta, but it's very cool too. Oh yeah, definitely watch that one as well. But it's about a woman who's writing a guy's life, and it's about the guy living. And you know how we writers are, what we like to do to our characters. So it's about the character experiencing his life as the writer is writing it, and he's conscious of the writer, he's being written this way, and he can't do anything about it. So like, it makes you stop and wonder as a writer, like, about what you're putting your people through. So what's your favorite like book based on a movie, or a movie about books, or some adaptations or something?
Okay, well, honestly, I think most books that are taken to movie, I think most of them suck. They take significant elements out, or they twist them.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom loves Twilight Zone. I've seen that a few times.
Twilight Zones are so good, though. They're classics. You can't.
But no, mostly, I mean, okay, so obviously Harry Potter came out, I went and saw the movies. Twilight came out, I went and saw the movies.
Yeah.
But there's very few adaptations out there that come from books or manga that actually work.
Mm-hmm.
There's always something missing. There's always something wrong. There's things that obviously you have to take out because movies are only so long. TV shows can only add so much.
Yeah.
But too often they take away something that is necessary.
I think you're right.
No, we're not talking about you. Like, I'll use actually Twilight as a really good example. The movies were not half bad. Don't get me wrong. Okay. And I mean, I was a Twilight fan growing up. That was when I was in high school. And yeah, I was one of the fan guys who was just obsessed with Jacob. I love werewolves.
Come
on. But years later, I have reread the series. I've rewatched the movies, and it's like, for one, there's no emotion. At least from the main actress. She doesn't show enough emotion. She doesn't show I'm gonna make you leave. Go. But she doesn't show enough emotion.
Yeah, she seems very disconnected a lot, and like
reading the book, Bella is a very three-dimensional character.
Is she? Okay.
Oh my god, yes. She actually has flaws and everything that actually make her a believable character. If you watch her in the movies,
she feels very
she feels cardboard.
Yeah, she doesn't ever feel like she's quite sure what's going on, and she's uncertain, which I think is an element of being a teenager and being like, I don't quite know. But she's always got like that.
She takes it too far.
The
only time her attitude matched the character was when Edward left and Bella went into that depressive state. That was the only time that she actually acted like the character. And beyond that, the movies didn't really change too much. They left out quite a bit. There's a little bit more to Jasper's backstory, for instance. The fact that Jacob and his pack are not werewolves. They're actually called Children of the Moon. They are shapeshifters. The first time they shapeshifted actually happened to be with a wolf. There are real werewolves living in Europe, and most of them were eradicated thanks to the Italian vampires. But yeah, most adaptations they fail because they take essential things out from the books that they either think aren't essential, or more often than not, they don't have time to put them in there.
Yeah,
or in some cases, they just don't have an actor that can portray a character the way they need to.
And you run into like the fan expectations too of the book characters and how they look, and a lot of times it comes between like casting the right actor for the role or the right actress for the role, or like casting somebody who looks like them but isn't necessarily. You got a nice combination of both with the guy who did Freddie Mercury in the movie, the biopic that came out with him, because they were able to they've been using prosthetics a lot lately, I've noticed. For actors and actresses. But you're right, like a lot of times it's just way too difficult to try to put a book on film.
The only book that I know that matched the that movies matched it exactly was Holes. And the only difference between the book and the movie was the main character. The guy who played Stanley, Shia LaBeouf. the director refused to have a heavyset kid play the main character because he did not want to put that kid into an unhealthy state by losing too much weight too quickly.
I heard that.
But that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Other than that, I've read the book. I've seen the movie multiple times.
Mm.
It fits perfectly. But it's the only one I've seen that actually manages to do that. And the only change is for a very good reason.
We've got a couple of our watchers have some movies they'd like to discuss as well.
I have heard of that. I have yet to see that.
I watched the movie. I loved it. I didn't read the book. I like that the movie added some depth to Miranda. The book really didn't. The Birds was actually based on a short story. I did not know that. A lot of movies are surprisingly based on short stories that I've never heard of. I'm like, where are these things getting published? Interview with a Vampire, the TV show, is stunning. I still haven't seen it, but I want to. I haven't read the book. I have. And the movie, okay, never mind. This is not my opinion. Somebody else.
I've seen the movie, but I did not know I forgot there was a TV show, and I want to find that book now.
Yeah, I know. I haven't read the book, so I can't judge on the adaptation, but it's genuinely fantastic. I tried to watch the movie, and I hated it. Oh, I think you had to be, there was a certain time when that movie just clicked. Yeah. Like you have to be there. One of those you had to be there moments for it, because Brad Pitt was on fire when he made that movie. Like, oh my God. And like, of course, everybody hated the idea of Tom Cruise coming on as Lestat, because Tom Cruise cannot pull up. Who knew the guy could actually act? Like it was, and looking back, like maybe, like I actually rewatched it a couple of years ago, and I kind of went, oh. But when it came out at the time, it was so good. It was all we could talk about. And I read all the books too, up to I think Memnoch the Devil. Anne Rice's books. I didn't get into her. Like, I'd like to see what she said about Jesus sometime, because I think it's very interesting when a writer who writes erotica, vampire erotica, starts writing about the life of Jesus Christ. Like, what is she going to have to say about that? That's interesting.
That's a pretty big shift in genre there.
I know, right? Like, I'm going to check that out. Marcella says, whoops.
Devil Wears Prada the best original soundtrack.
I haven't heard the soundtrack. I'll have to go to check that out. Shrek 2 soundtrack? Really? Oh God, okay, yes. Now I definitely have to check it out, because Shrek 2 was amazing. Hello, Nil. Nice to see you. I love Bohemian. Yeah, that's what it was called, Bohemian Rhapsody. I thought the guy who played the actor did very, very well. IWTV show makes Louis black, and I really appreciate the new nuances of character. Very well done. Yeah, Louis, he was from New Orleans, and so historically, like, definitely that ties into an accurate depiction of the time. And the New Orleans was different in terms of like it was more liberal than the rest of the country at the time in terms of race. It was liberal with a lot of different things. It was New Orleans. But like, yeah, I think that's a great adaptation. And they used the guy who played the worm in, was it White Worm from Game of Thrones? And I want to watch it, because that guy in Game of Thrones he was an unsullied, like he was an unsullied soldier. So he was basically like very stiff, and, like he was trained to not have emotions and everything like that. And Grey Worm, thank you, Jacob Anderson, that's right. And so I want to watch him as Louis, because Louis is my favorite character. Yes, Lestat, but Louis has that little poet soul that I adore. So I want to see how he pulls off my Louis. So I need to get on that. I really do. The Lestat, I think he's always going to be a brat no matter what. I didn't like him in Queen of the Damned, like the movie they did with, what was there, Aaliyah, I think. I thought she was hot, but that was about the only reason I watched it. So I thought that the music. If
there's any other movie adaptations. Well, one thing though that I know that a lot of people were disappointed about with the Harry Potter movies was they took out Peeves.
I don't know. I didn't read the books.
Oh my God.
I know. Am I fired?
Peeves was the poltergeist for the castle, And he basically think of Fred and George, but as a single poltergeist. Peeves was the bane of Filch's existence.
Oh, I would have loved that. Yeah, I did watch all the movies. I started.
Yeah, honestly, Peeves' best moment in the books was in book 5 with Umbridge. When Fred and George just bolted from the castle. Peeves actually tipped his hat to them and just made Umbridge's life just hell in the castle after that.
I'm so glad. That would have brought some nice relief. I've heard some interesting theories about Umbridge. There's Voldemort is obviously big scary bad guy. Why is Umbridge more hated sometimes than Voldemort? And it's because
she's more believable.
Yeah, she's not everybody.
You are more likely to encounter an Umbridge than you are a Voldemort.
Exactly, and so that makes her almost the bigger villain.
Plus, not to mention with Umbridge, if you really think about it, most people have heard of somebody that are like her.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's people who are in power, people who are above you in the social system, which, is not fair.
No.
But most people have encountered someone similar to Umbridge at some point in their life. And so when they see Umbridge, they see everything that they've met, that they've seen, all in one tiny, disgusting-looking package. Because there was way too much pink.
I couldn't believe she liked cats. I'm like, come on. Obviously,
I know.
That hurt my feelings. So my problem with that was reading it. I started it with the movies. And so I went back and forth on whether or not I was going to continue watching the movies and finishing the story that way or reading the books. So I actually ended up watching all the movies first. It is the same thing with Game of Thrones. I watched the series first, and then I went back and started reading the books. And the books pack a lot harder punch. And I only made it to the Red Wedding in the books. And... I apparently need to go back and watch them.
You need to read the books and encounter Peeves because, I'm personally not a huge fan of him, but then again, I'm not a fan of anyone who really gets into pranks and stuff. It's a personal thing. But that moment, though, in book 5 with Umbridge, that was just golden. Oh, yeah, and also in the Battle of Hogwarts, he had a huge part, too.
Did he really?
Yes, and it was hilarious.
Oh, I see. I missed out on a lot of what was going on.
Just about any other book adaptation, there is so much more in the books for that than there is in the movies. And honestly, I don't think there was really much in the movies that they did better than the books, even for Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's one or two moments, in the entire series, not one specific book, but I cannot think of what it was. Because it was something in the last movie, and it was something in the third one. Prisoner of Azkaban.
Mm-hmm. That was my favorite movie. Was Prisoner of Azkaban. With Sirius Black probably had something to do with it.
No, it wasn't with Sirius Black. It was a Lupin. I think it was something about his transformation or something like that. Oh, that's what it was. The transformation. Apparently, granted, this was not really a true comparison between the book and the movie, but the book described it well. But they did it so well in the movies that it was. It didn't look quite as fake as the older movies have done for werewolf transformations.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed that werewolf transformations are one of the hardest things for filmmakers to do. The Hemlock Grove werewolf transformation is by far my favorite. And yeah, check that one out sometime. It's actually very disgusting too, but it just seems to be very werewolfy transformation-y. I was Tiara says that she tried hard to get into Harry Potter and read the first 3 books and watched the movies, just not my thing. I think that I wish I had read the books as we got closer to the 2-part ending, because I was so lost what was going on. It would have been so helpful if I'd had the guided tour through the books. But I would just watch them, and I was like, I had to watch them probably 3 more times before I understood what was going on. My favorite magical children's series is The Golden Compass. And yes, and the first movie they did, the series that they started to do afterwards, when they decided they weren't going, because Pullman very much like has things to say about Christianity in the books, and as a Brit, he could get away with it, but the American studios weren't buying it because they were afraid it would mess up their like, you know.
I could see that. So I have to admit, the movie I actually really loved the movie.
Did you? I mean, it had a lot of cool stuff.
It did, and honestly, my favorite thing was the whole thing about demons.
Mm-hmm.
That was really neat. That they weren't just this physical creature that could shapeshift, basically, but also the fact that they turned like this golden dust. That was a really neat effect. I love the special effect for that, and Urich was just awesome.
Yeah.
But I read the entire series a few times, and unfortunately, I did not read it until I was a little older. I think I finally got a copy of all 3 books maybe 6 years ago. So I didn't. So I saw the movie when it came out, but then it was years later that I encountered the series itself. And I tried watching the show, but I could not get into that, and I think part of it is I was so used to the movie.
Yeah.
Seeing Lyra the way she was just, it was really off-putting for me. And so it's just like a personal block that I have to work past, and I know I will eventually if I ever decide to get HBO Max again.
There were some good, like, I liked the production values of the movie. I thought that was much better done. I wish they'd done it more as a TV series, like through HBO or something that had a bigger budget that could have dealt with, because there was so much CGI that needed to be used because of like the daemons and stuff. But like the movie, it went soft on the Christian aspects of it, and like the kind of the Umbridge Christian aspects of it, if you want to call it like that desire to control. But also like the interpretation by the series it's not as pretty. And yeah, some of the choices were questionable, but like I only watched the first season, but like the story was much better told because they gave it longer to tell it. And the ending of the first season with the polar bears, I can't remember what their names are, but the ending for the series. Yeah, the
Panzerbjorn.
Is that it?
That's the name for the polar bears.
Okay, the polar bears. Okay, yeah. It was so much better, I thought, in the series. I thought they did such a good job with it. And I really wanted to see what they did with the next 2. But, like, yeah, it wasn't as pretty, which hurt my feelings because I really loved it.
When you say it's not as pretty, you mean they just didn't do it as well, or it's dark?
No, it's just, it just felt like watching, trying to think of how to say this. I don't really know a proper comparison for it. Like, I thought that they had a bigger budget that they crafted to use a very engaging kids movie. And I thought with the series, it felt more like realistic and less fantastical. Like, and some of the elements were, and you just, with a lower budget, you have to make cuts. And I also really missed Daniel Craig. So there's that. But not Nicole Kidman. I didn't like her character, though. That's probably just personal bias.
Who did she play?
She played Lyra's mom in the movie.
Mrs. Coulter?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now I picture.
The golden money. And I thought the CGI effects were better in the movie, too.
Yeah, no, that's one reason why I really like the movie growing up, is just basically just the whole thing with demons.
Yeah,
Plus,
that was so cool.
I personally have a soft spot for leopards, so actually seeing Stelmaria actually be, like an actually like real looking snow leopard was just so cool.
It was
difficult to tell they were fake.
Yeah, they did. That's what I'm saying. Like, they did such
the level of CGI was, I think, equivalent to Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean. And that's like one of the best CGIs out there.
Yeah, it was incredible. No, I totally agree. It was so pretty. It just it's such a philosophical book for kids, though, because you get into like alternate realities and different parallel universes, and the nature of existence by the third book, which I thought was a little overdone, but whatever. But
honestly, the ending of it with Lyra and the boy, just
that
was very heavy-handed.
I thought
it wasn't bad. It was just too heavy.
I don't know. But we gotta. You need to get going here in a minute.
Yes, I do. I actually do have another writers group that I do on Tuesdays. So as long as I'm out here by 7:30, as long as I'm out here by like 7:25, I'm good.
Okay, so you got about 10 minutes.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go through, catch up on the comments right quick. Check out the old werewolf movie, and Albert and Costello meet Frankenstein for werewolf transformations. That's what we had. I think
I've seen those.
Have you?
I think so.
I was really into Universal monster movies as a teenager. The Wolfman was like one of my faves. I love that. I love camp so much. I love old black and white horror.
Yeah,
I love Dracula, but I thought it was
not
way
one
too
of the kids that could watch any of those.
Yeah, you don't like horror, do you?
Well, okay, so nowadays I don't like horror, and I think part of it is just I never got into it. But as a kid, it gave me nightmares terribly.
Oh yeah.
We were watching, and this was the animated version for Pete's sakes. I was at a local camp, and we decided it was like a Wednesday night. It was like a week thing, and we were going to watch a movie. And we were watching The Headless Horseman. It was the animated, and I had. Are you talking about
the Disney Sleepy Hollow one?
Maybe. Yeah, it was Sleepy Hollow.
Okay, like that scene on the bridge, I can see.
Yeah, that actually gave me nightmares, and I went back a couple years after that, and the counselors remember me every time, and they're like, you know what, you can take your book and you can go sit over here, so you don't have to watch this. They actually felt really bad for me, but they were really nice about it.
That's so cool. I had one of those. I had an overactive imagination when I was younger, and so like my parents like prevented me from watching a lot of horror movies when I was tiny. But I went over to a friend's house and watched Beetlejuice, and that was
when I was 8, I was over at my cousin's house, and they decided. And keep in mind, my cousins are only like 2 and 4 years older than me. They decided that Pet Sematary 2 was a good movie to watch at night.
Oh no!
And I'm sitting there sleeping on a couch with a dark hallway facing me. So I had nightmares the entire night of that white dog. I don't know if it was Pet Sematary 2. Both of them creeped the ever-living you-know-what out of me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm unable to watch it. It's because of those movies I'm actually unable to watch horror, because they actually scarred me bad enough that I could not ever try a horror movie after that. Oh. Plus, I'm pretty sure as a child I walked in on my parents watching Chucky.
Oh no! I thought you were going to say something else, but it was Chucky.
Yeah, no. My parents never watch anything worse than horror that a kid should not see.
My thing was like, okay, Beetlejuice kind of wigged me out as a child, but I loved Halloween and I loved like fun kids horror movies. But when I was like 10, somebody decided to rent Poltergeist because they just redone it and added a bunch of weird scenes in it, and that one scarred me for a while. I still really... Oh, Tara's...
I feel your pain.
Restrooms by myself. Yes. Final Destination 2 or 3, the scene with the truck and the logs. And
I think everyone knows that, even if they haven't seen the movie. I've seen it,
and nobody in the world wants to drive behind that guy anymore because of that. Because it was. I saw it in the theater, and I was just like it was terrifying to watch.
I can imagine. I just saw the image. I can't imagine how it was in the actual movie.
It was awful. Yeah.
I know my husband, he's actually watched at least a couple of the Final Destination movies. And I once saw a clip of this, and granted this was like a year ago, so it wasn't as bad as as it would have been if I were a kid. And I just remember looking over, and it was like a chain of events, and it's just like, people like this.
I got into it. I thought it was great because I was like, how do things happen? You know, and like started like there was an X-File about this. Called Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, and he got really good at like seeing consequences so much that he became a psychic. And so like, yeah, so the Final Destinations were more like putting the little ball in the thing, and it bing, 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 bing goes through a series of whatever. The X-File was more sophisticated with it. Yeah, Butterfly Effect was another one that I liked. There's a lot of, I love it when people like make one movie and everybody kind of jumps on the bandwagon for a hot minute, and you get like a bunch of cool like fringe genre movies for a second, and then everybody stops making them.
Yeah, and it goes like 2 to 3 years, maybe sometimes up to 5 between that style of movie. It's like there's like 20 in 1 year, and then 5 years later,
you never hear about it again.
But there's like nothing in between that.
There was one of my favorites is like I'm sure the same. Should probably I'm sure the same thing happens in books. We were talking about market saturation earlier, and like a lot of the trends that a lot of writers hop on and a lot of readers want to get more of. So like, but those are more like fabulous. For me, I don't know, movies, it's easier for me to gauge trends because I can see them, and it might just be because I'm a visual learner, but like books, there seem to be exponentially so many more books out there that it is so difficult for me to try to gauge what trends are.
Yeah. I have to admit, I don't really pay much, I mean, I should, but I don't actually pay much attention to trends. Movies, music, well, okay, maybe music a little bit.
Yeah.
But movies, TV shows, books, even video games to a point, I don't really pay much attention to the trends going on. Maybe video games to an extent, almost as much as music, but it kind of varies depending on the game I'm looking at. But I don't really get into the trend thing. I mean, I understand if it works, it works. More people are going to buy it. But personally, at least when it comes to my own writing, I'm going to write it. And when I'm done, I'm going to publish it regardless of if it's popular at that time or not. Because I just want to get my books out there.
I get that. And for a lot of like independent writers, like the more you have out on the sales floor, the better, right? I think that the thing that I'm trying to figure out is like, I mean, like, I think there's an audience for everything.
There is.
I think that like figuring out what trends at least align with what you're writing is important so that you can market it to that group so that you can, but I mean, like, there's so much going on. I really, really, really want, like, I don't want to market my books because I think that sounds, I think that once I figured out who my target audience is, like, I'd be fine. Like, if I knew the hashtag that would go out and find my target audience, that would be great. But I'm just not sure what that is right now. So there's this whole like, and this is the part that kind of sucks about being an independent writer and a GDI writer, which is what we called people who didn't live on campus in college. They were gosh darn independent. But if you're not catering to like a market that's already been proven, then you have to kind of figure out how to find your audience in another way, and that's more difficult. Sometimes I wish I wrote like romantasy, just because it would be so much easier to try to sell copies of it. And then my soul's like, no, don't do that. Hello, Natalie. Welcome back. Oh, Final Destination. Okay. So yeah,
that's what I was thinking. What she meant.
I was like I didn't know what it was because obviously my brain just like scatters every 5 seconds and I have to recollect my thoughts. So you need to get going to your other writers group.
Yep.
I'm going to go too as well because I don't know how long I could talk by myself, but it's probably more. I'll get my sock puppet out and we'll have a conversation that way. What do you think about that? Oh, I think that's just divine. Okay, yeah, no, that's not happening.
But I will go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and go then, and I will see everyone tomorrow night at the writers group because I'm always there.
Yes, the writers group. I think that we can expect regularly scheduled programming tomorrow, and we will see you guys back here. Oh, do you want to do the thing?
I am trying to find it. Give me a second.
Okay. I'll do interpretive dance until then so that I'm not a liar. I did it. I can't do it.
So I'll say this. I'll go ahead and start the outro. So if you've been enjoying our random talks tonight, like I think half of the conversation we had yesterday, just jumping around different topics.
Oh yeah. Bing, 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 bing.
Go ahead and like and subscribe. There's usually something a little more stable going on, but with the both of us, don't expect much.
Don't expect much stability, or I can't believe we talked about one topic as long as we did tonight. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that actually was pretty awesome.
Kaufman's really good at Kaufman. We're okay, but Kaufman's really good at this. So please don't judge this book by its presenters. Well, me anyway.
But yeah, no, if you've been enjoying this, like and subscribe, and just join us throughout the week because there's something going on every day. Tomorrow night is our writers group. Sounds like Kaufman should be back. If not, then at least I will be there.
So I'll be here.
But I'm ChatSol, and this is
Penelope Hartley.
And we will see you guys on the morrow.
You said it.